we're probably good. We won't delay any further. Well, welcome to our, driving down safety incidents learning live this morning. We have Thanicha from our training team here to give this presentation. If you have questions, we want you to ask those questions. So please use the Q&A function to ask those questions at any point in the presentation. Anytime it pops in your head, put it in there. She may answer it, later into the presentation, but still just put it in there. Let us know what kind of questions you have. And if you put them in the normal, chat function, we may miss them in there because there'll be some talking in there. So put them in the Q&A function. We'll get those. I'll try to answer as many questions as we can as we go throughout this presentation. But if we have time at the end, we'll do a live Q&A with Thanicha. And any questions that we don't get a chance to answer here live today, we will record those, send out a document with all the answers on there. And anytime you have, follow-up questions that you're not sure where to find the answer, can't find the answer to something that you saw in a presentation, saw in one of these learning lives, feel free to reach out to the community, ask your questions there. I'll be in the community, and other experts within the industry and geotabbers are in the community, happy to answer any questions you have or point you to the right resources. And like I said at the beginning, this is recorded. So if you have to step away, even for a little bit, no worries. You will be able to watch this recording back once it's sent out early next week and send it to any coworkers. As you're watching this, like, wow, somebody may really benefit from this. You can send this recording to them. It'll be a public link. So it's not just for you. It'll be public on our sites. So without any further delay, let's welcome Thanicha to the stage. Hi, Thanicha. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Yishi. Thank you so much for the introduction. So, hello, everyone. My name is Thanicha Tamar Labbé, and I am a training specialist here on the professional training services team at Geotab. And I want to welcome you to today's webinar, Drive Down Safety Incident, Predictive Tools, Rules, and Collision. So let's get started. Before we dive in, like Yishi mentioned before, just going to go do a little quick housekeeping item. So first, if you have any questions during the session, drop that in the Q&A tool, right? You will find it in the webinar panel. So I will do my best to address them as we go, or Yishi will also do it with me. If we run out of time, no worries. I will follow up with answers after the session ends. Then you will receive the slide decks, right? So just focus on the content right now. No need to take screenshots, and you will get it in your inbox. And we will also follow up with any outstanding questions after the sessions end. So, all right, with that covered, let's get into it. So, as I said before, my name is Thanicha Tamar Labbé, and I know it's quite a mouthful. So people call me Tani, right? So I'm on the training specialist. I'm a training specialist, on the professional training services team at Geotab. And I've been with Geotab for the past 6 years. So I'm a Haitian Canadian based out of Montreal, and my first language is French, right? So if ever you notice a little accent creeping in, now you know where it comes from. Like I said, I've been with Geotab for the past 6 years now. So my first 4 years, I was on the support team. So if ever you called in and got someone warm and enthusiastic, either on the night shift, day shift, I was on all of them. It was probably me, right? So for the past 2 years, I have been on the training team where I've had the pleasure to work with hundreds of Geotab customers, helping them get the best out of our platform, right? So I also had the honor of presenting at the last 2 Geotab Connect events. So some of you I may have actually met in person. And today I get the chance to do it again. It's just a little bit different, right? Virtually, which is honestly, I think it's pretty special too. So I really love what I do. And today I get to talk about one of my favorite topic, which is safety. So let's get into it. All right. So today's agenda, we are going to cover our full safety ecosystem, which is a 3-layer progressive approach to driving down the safety incident. So first, we monitor with the safety rules, okay? So our new and improved rules that eliminate any false positive and auto-calibrate to your assets. Then we are going to move on to predictions with the collision risk model, which is an AI-powered tool that tells you which driver or vehicle are most likely to be in a collision before it happens. After that, we're going to analyze with collision reconstruction. So when a collision does happen, you have the exact data to understand what occurs. And finally, we are going to do a little live demo where I'm going to walk you through a real collision investigation in MyGeotab step by step. So again, drop your question in the chat at any time. So let's talk about progressively building your safety culture, right? So think of it as 3 levels. You have the level 1, which is the baseline, the safety scorecard. And this is where most fleet starts, right? So the driver safety scorecard gives you a reactive tool. It's giving you a reactive look at the driver's behavior. So you see what happened, who did what, and how often. So it's easy to implement, and it's a great starting point. So you can shift your driver mindset and also establish a baseline. You can customize it to track it, the rules that matters the most to your fleet, and also look at the data by week, by month, however you want. The level 2 is the predictive layer with our collision risk model. This is what we're going to focus on today. So the collision risk page really moves you beyond the historical data and into predictions. So if you're not yet fully committed to video telematics, maybe it's an operational decision or union related, there are still a way to reduce your fleet overall risk of collision. So we take that reactive data and we feed into our AI prediction model that tells you right now which driver are more likely to be involved in a collision, right? We also have the level 3, which is the Go Focus family. So you have the full video telematics family. So we won't go deep into this today, but this is where the dash cams comes in, right? So video context adds a whole new layer. It connects the exception reports, the scorecard, and the collision risk data with actual footage so you can understand the full picture. And if this is something you want to explore further, I have a good news. So my colleague and friend, Diego Pasqualino, is hosting a dedicated webinar on the GoFocus family on June 3rd. So I will drop the registration link in the chat for you, and I would love for you to join him for that one too. Awesome. So today we are going to focus on level 1 and level 2. So let's jump into section 1. Monitoring the behavior with our new safety rules. Before we look at how these rules work, right, let me set the stage with something a lot of you might relate to, okay? If you manage a mixed fleet, different vehicle types, different vehicle sizes, you know that applying the same safety threshold across the board is not really straightforward, right? It's not always straightforward. So a harsh braking event for a pickup truck does not look the same as one for a heavy-duty vehicle. And when the rules are not calibrating to the assets, you start seeing false positive, the driver getting flagged for events that were not even actually unsafe, right? So over the years, I've heard this from so many customers, so many different companies. So the exception reports get noisy, the drivers start questioning the data, and it creates more work than it should. So that's the reality of a lot of fleets that have been navigating. So that's exactly the gap that these new rules are going to close. So this brings us to the new and improved safety rules. So this is how it works. First, you get the auto-calibration, right? So the system reads the VIN and it detects the vehicle type automatically. So you have the light vehicle, light duty, heavy duty, whatever it is, it can adjust the sensitivity accordingly. So you don't need to touch any sliders anymore. It handles itself. Then you have the GPS powered detection. So the algorithm doesn't just look at the G-force, right, from the accelerometer. And also look at the map, the GPS data combined with the accelerometer data. It gives you a much higher accuracy and far fewer false positives. So all of that connected to the AI model, these rules feeds directly into the collision risk page that we will look at next. So they are the same input that power the predictive model, which is what makes the whole safety ecosystem work together. So if you're not enabled this yet, I would strongly recommend it. And here's how you would do it. It's really simple. You go to your database and you will go to your groups and rules. And you will go to your rules. And the first at the top is the new one that I was talking about, right? So you have the speeding, hard acceleration, harsh braking, harsh cornering, and these are the legacy one that you had to top right. So what you want to do is just turn it on, click turn on, and it's safe, and you're good to go. If you want to be notified again, you can always add your notifications right there. Make sure that you add your email address, add it, and then save it. Really simple. All right. So while we were talking about the new and improved rules, right, there's two specific ones that I want to make sure that are on your radar because they tie directly into everything else that we are going to cover today. So our legacy rules was creating false positive, right? So what we did is we introduced these two improved collision detection rules. So you have the minor collision rule. So this is based on anything related to 1.5 to 2.5 G-force with the accelerometer data being read with more precision and greater reliability, right? So it's going to warn you about any low impact collision or damage like parking lot scrapes, those mirror clips, right? Those low speed impact that I've been told over and over again from customers that their driver don't really report, right? They just know when they bring the vehicle to the shop. So you also have the major collision rule, which warns you on the high impact collision greater than 2.5 G-force. So for these one, I would recommend to set up the notification, right, differently. So you want to have the pop-up right away or the notifications email. So I'm going to show you where you can find them. It's pretty simple. And I suggest to turn off the legacy one and turn on the new ones. So how you would do that, it's pretty simple. You will see it under your groups and rules and the safety portion. And you have the minor collision, the major collision. And like I said, you want to set up the notifications. So let me just show you here. I'm still on the rules page. So groups and rules right here. I'm going to go down just a little bit and you will see them right there. Major collision and minor collision. I want to turn them on and make sure that you set up your notifications. And when I was talking about the different types of notification, right, you have obviously your email address. I'm just going to add mine here. I'm going to save it. But you could also say, I always have my monitor over there and I'm looking at it every day. So I'm just going to add an urgent pop-up, right? And so what I can do, add it there and make sure that you have it set up. That way it's going to show up in your screen right away when it happened and you can be proactive with it. Obviously, you want to save at the top because if you don't save it, no change that you made will appear. Awesome. So now that we have set up our rules, let me show you where what you can do with them, right? How do you want to see it in action? You can always go to the groups and rules and the exception page. From there, you can search on your collision rules, select both major and minor collision, and that will be your main view for all flagged event. So when you click on it, on one, you will see the option to verify if this collision really happened. You can say yes or no, dismiss it, or say that it really happened. But before you decide, right, you want to look at the location, pull the speed graph, and look at those G-force spikes, right? So two things to watch for. If the speed drops to 0 instantly, that's more than likely a crash. If the speed kept going after the spike, it could be a pothole or just a curb strike. So the system is flagging potential events, but you are the judge, right? So once you review the data, you can confirm or dismiss right from that same page. And I'm going to show you where to find that. So groups and rules, I'm going to go to my exception page and make sure that you select the assets that you want. And I'm going to go ahead and look for my collision rules, so major and minor. And I will also look for the time frame. So let me go ahead and put since a year ago. Pretty sure we're going to have something. And I do have one, right? So I can always look at it and I have the vehicle in questions. I have how many times it happened, the exception duration, how long it was for. And if I click on it, I can even go even granularly. It's going to show me the exact timestamp where it was at. And there I can see also the speed profile, the speed detail, the map where it was at. And if there was a driver, I would have seen it right there. If I have anything, I can always drop the file, like a ticket or something. And then I can also verify the collision right here on the top corner and say, did this collision really happen? Yes or no? I can either say yes or dismiss it and save it. All right. So this brings us to our level 2, okay? So we want to look at the collision risk model, the predictive layers of your safety culture. So the collision risk page lives under the safety in MyGeotab. So some of you may have seen it and never fully explored it. Others may have just discovered it today, right? So either way, by the end of this section, you will have a clear picture of what it can do and why it matters. So the goal is really simple. We want to prevent those collisions before they happen. So instead of looking at what went wrong last month, the collision risk model tells you today which driver and vehicle have the highest probability of being involved in a collision in the next 100,000 kilometers or miles. So let's break down how it works. So to explain it, I want to use a quick analogy. Okay, so think about when you're driving a car, you use both the rearview mirror and the windshield, right? But there's a reason why the windshield is so much bigger. Where you're going matters a lot more than where you've been. So that's exactly how I would like to think about those two tools. So the driver safety scorecard is your rearview mirror. It tells you what happened, right? How many harsh events, how many speeding incidents. That data still matters, right? It's still useful, but it's looking at the past. The collision risk model is your windshield. It's forward-looking. It uses machine learning to analyze millions of driving patterns and answer one very specific question. What is the probability of this driver being involved in a collision in the next 100,000 miles or kilometers? So the scorecard tells you who's breaking those rules. The collision risk model tells you who's more likely to crash. And you need both to see the full picture. So if you have any question about those, I'm pretty sure you're going to have the answer after that. So now that you understand what the collision risk model is, let me walk you through what it actually does for you, right? So first, it gives you expert level safety simplified. So we take those complex driving data and turn it into clear, actionable insight that that anyone on your team really can understand and act on. Next, it's going to help you prevent the collision before they happen, right? So instead of reacting after an accident, you use predictive data to get ahead of the risk. You can also see how you stack up, right? So the model lets you benchmark your fleet safety performance against the industry peers. So you're setting goals that actually mean something. And here's one that I really like. It empowers the drivers to own their own safety, right? So through the Drive app, the driver can see their own risk score and also self-coach. So that takes a lot of the management burden off of your plate. It also helps you focus on what truly matters. So no more chasing those false alerts or spending time on events that don't actually indicate real risks. And finally, it does all of this while respecting the privacy. You get powerful collision risk insight without needing driver-facing cameras. And no need new hardwares, right? It works with the Go device that you already have. So, what sets the predictive model apart? I'm about to show you more words on the one screen than you ever going to see from me again, I promise. So bear with me for just a moment because this is really worth it. So what I want to do here is give you a sense of just how complex and thorough this model actually is. It's not just tracking one thing, right? It's looking at four distinct categories simultaneously. So the first one, the harsh events. So this covers the braking, acceleration, cornering, but not in a generic way, right? So the model applies strict threshold that accounts for context of the event, like a hard brake at an intersection is treated differently than one on the highway, right? So it filters out the noise and it focuses on the behavior that are genuinely linked to collision, the higher collision risk. Then you have the speeding. And it's not just about whether someone exceed the speed limits. The models measure how far over or how long and also how often. So our driver who speed by 5 kilometers over miles once is very different from someone that has a consistent pattern of sustained speeding. So that difference matter a lot. And then you also have the area-based risk. This one is really interesting, right? So the model considers the specific road segment, the time of the day, the weather condition, the travel direction, and also the crash history of that exact route. Not just the general geographic area. So two drivers can cover the same distance, and the model still evaluates their risk differently based on where they actually drove. And then we have the collision data. So finally, the model is really trained on verified real collision data, not just assumption. Okay, so it continuously updates as new collision data comes in, so it stays aligned with what is actually happening on the road today. So together, those four pillars are what is making this a true predictive model, not just a scorecard. So this brings us to the collision risk page, right? So this is what the collision risk page in your database looks like. And you can find it under your safety, then the collision risk. So what you see here is the probability of a collision happening in the next 100,000 kilometers or miles for your overall fleet or for individual assets. So before I walk you through each part, I want to quickly explain how the benchmark works. Okay, so Geotab compares your fleet to a peer group. So other fleets with similar vehicle type of work, and similar operation areas. So that context is what makes the data meaningful. So if we start at the top left, you will notice that there's a toggle between assets and drivers, right? So you use the assets when you want to evaluate your vehicle, like is a specific truck type causing the issue? And then you can switch to the drivers when you want to look at people and figure out who might need the coaching. In the center of the page, you will see the average collision risk. So that's your fleet, our overall pulse right now. Okay, so this is the probability of a crash occurring within your fleet. And it's also comparing it to the benchmark. Now, my favorite part is at the bottom, which I said before, the benchmark one. So a number is not, doesn't mean much, right? But with context, it becomes really useful because the orange line is really the benchmark. This is the industry average at the 50th percentile. So the green line is the best in class, which is the top 20%. So the goal is really to get your fleet line, which is the blue one, as close to the green as possible. So if your line is above the orange, that's a signal that there's work to do. And on the top right corner, you will have the report dropdown. Okay, so you can pull a PDF for executive meetings or an Excel file. And if you want to do your own analysis, on the next slide, we'll talk about what these benchmark terms actually mean in practice. So now that we've seen the big picture for your whole fleet, Okay, we are going to zoom in and look at individual assets and drivers. So the first thing I want to point out is the collision risk column. Okay, so this is not just a safety score, it's actual probability. Okay, so it's going to tell you the likelihood of that specific assets or driver being involved in the collision, like we said. But the number alone, it doesn't just tells you why, right? That's where those 5 different behaviors come into play. So you have the speeding, acceleration, braking, cornering, and tailgating. So these are the specific driving patterns that feed into the overall risk score. And they help you pinpoint exactly where the issue is so you know what to focus on in your coaching. So you're going to notice a risk classification next to each of the assets or drivers, right? So you have best, average, underperforming, or at risk. So that gives you a quick way to prioritize who needs your attention first. So one quick note on the tailgating, right? So that rating is based on the ADAS system data. So it's currently available for heavy duty and EMV duty vehicle only. So I'm going to show you in MyGeotab where you can locate that. So under your safety in your menu, you are going to click on collision risk. And today mine is pretty high, 18.40%. And you have right here your fleet in blue, the benchmark in orange, and the best in class in green, right? And you have it at different stage. And you can also pull it for a different date range. Mine is set at the last 30 days, but I could also look at the last 12 months, which will give me a much broader vision. And where I was showing you that, if we go down a little bit, I have my assets. And if I would go by drivers, I would have them right here, right? And I see their own risk and those different categories. We are going to talk about those bubbles in a moment, but let's get back to the presentation. So this one is one of my review of the whole product, right? Because you can compare those assets and drivers between each other. So on the page, you can put specific vehicles or drivers side by side so you can really see what's going on. Okay, so on the graph, you can add up to 3 vehicles at a time or 3 drivers, and you can compare them directly to your fleet average. So in this example, we can look at the SUV 954. Okay, the fleet average is already high at 14.6. which is above the industry benchmark of 10.5. So there's already work to do at a fleet level, right? But the SUV 954 is sitting at 27%, so nearly the double the fleet average. So that's exactly the kind of assets that you want to flag and prioritize first. Now, there's something important, right? The vehicle don't just cause the collision. It's people that does it, right? Most often. So you can toggle over to the driver tab, like I show you, to shift from the asset view to the human one, so you can see exactly what's going on. So when you compare those drivers, we analyze them based on equal distance traveled to, right? So why does it matter? It's because it makes the comparison fair. You're not going to penalize your hardest working drivers just because they're on the road more, right? It levels the playing field. So you're comparing actual risk behavior like speeding, braking, tailgating, and not just how many miles someone's drove. So we've seen the trend. Now let's look at the specifics. Okay, so in the table, you're going to notice those different colors pill that I showed you earlier next to the assets or the driver's name. So high, average, low. That's your quick indicator of where your focus or your attention should go first. But what I really want you to pay attention to is the prediction text, right? It doesn't just say bad driver, right? It's something like, for example, this driver has a 37.2 chances of a collision, which is a high risk compared to similar driver. And this is based on the next 100,000 kilometers. So that's a forward-looking statement, okay? You're not just reviewing on what already happened. And going back to the fairness factor I mentioned earlier, this model doesn't compare everyone to the same standard. It compares driver to other drivers in similar work, similar areas, similar vehicle. We're comparing apple to apple. So if someone is flagged at high risk, means they're riskier than others doing the same exact job in the same exact condition. And that's a meaningful distinction. So to understand your fleet health, you need to understand the percentile ranking. Okay, so there's 5 distinct categories based on how they compare to the industry average. So at risk is from 0% to 15%. These are your bottom 15. They have the highest probability of a collision and they need immediate intervention. Then you have the underperforming between 16% and 30%. So they aren't in the critical red zone, but they are still performing below the industry standard. So you could coach them to move into the average bucket. Then you have the average between 31% and 70%. This is the fat middle of the bell curve. So most of the driver will land here, hopefully, and they are consistent with the industry norms. And then you have great, which is between 71% and 85%. So these drivers are safer than the average. They are doing everything right, but not quite at the elite level. Okay, because you have the best, that is between 86% and 100%. These are your top 15% of the industry. You want to recognize and reward them, keep them happy because they are the one that's saving you money, right? So the strategy, you try to don't try to fix the whole curve at once, okay? You want your immediate ROI coming from moving the 0.3, the first underperforming to maybe the average, the at risk to underperforming, and so on and so forth. And so once you pull that report on the top right corner, this should be your first page. Okay, so we look at the live dashboard, which is great for a quick check-in, but if you want to share it with your team or leadership, this is where the report comes in. Okay, so to access it, it's really simple. You click on the report button at the top of the page right here, right? So you can download the PDF, which is great for an executive meeting, or the Excel file. You just have to download it right here if you want to dig into the data yourself. So, like I show you, the first thing you'll see in the report is the breakdown risks branch. Okay, so how many of your vehicle fall into each of those categories, low, moderate, or high, and it gives you a clear snapshot of where your fleet stands overall. And if you don't want to pull this manually every time, you can schedule it to be sent out automatically on a weekly or monthly basis. That way your team always has the latest data without anyone having to remember to run it all over again. Once you download the report or receive it by email, this is the second page you'll see in the Excel file or the PDF. So this is the top and bottom performer view. It tells you which driver have the highest probability of being involved in a collision, so you can focus on your coaching where it matters the most. So one thing I love about this, the driver can also see their own risk level directly in the Drive app. So you don't have to be the one delivering the news every time, and they can check it on their own progress, right? So that also encourages the self-coaching and accountability. So here's how you can read it, right? So you can start with the date range, then look at each driver risk percentage, then the number is your signal for where to take actions, right? So the higher the percentage, the more urgent the conversation. For example, you see Bosco Vehicle 2, 42.54. This needs to have a good conversation for sure. So now this is the third tab in your report, right? So this is the one that has a lot more details. This is your summary page. It gives you everything you saw on the collision risk dashboard all in one place. So you'll see each assets or driver score compared to the best in class. So you know exactly where they stand against the top performer in the industry. You also see their risk breakdown by the categories, covering each of those 5 behaviors, right? So this is where you can really dig into it and understand not just that someone is at risk, but also why they're at risk and which specific behavior to address first in those coaching. So let me just show you right here. So once I download my report, like I said, collision risk report is the first page. You have your top and bottom, and you have your summary. Obviously, you can always save it, share it, whatever. Okay. So we just spent the last few minutes looking at the assets risk, and it identified which vehicle, is being driven aggressively. But that's the reality. The truck doesn't have bad habits. It's people that do, right? So if you want to really fix the risk, you need to know exactly who's behind the wheel, right? So that's why adding the driver in your database is really, really important. So if you see, for example, that you have truck number 5 that is speeding, but 3 different people is driving that truck, who do you coach, right? Without those driver data, you can't really answer that question. With it, you can. So setting this up is really straightforward admin work. So you go into the system and you add your drivers as your user. If you're not a regulated fleet using managing HOS, you just need to make sure that they have the correct user clearance. So the system recognizes them as a driver and not just a general user. Once they are in the system, there are 2 ways to assign a driver to a vehicle, right? The first one is the NFC fob. So the driver tap a key fob on the dash when they get in. The second one is the Drive app, where they log into their phone and our tablet, and then they are assigned to the vehicle that way. And also coming soon, facial recognition, but this will be with the GoFocus family. So once you add your driver into your system, so here's what becomes possible. Okay, so if they are using the Drive app, you can give them direct access to their own safety profile. So this is something that I found really, really powerful, because we build the safety profile right into the Drive app. So when they are driving, let's say they want to look at their logs, they complete their driver DVIR or check their hours, they will see the safety button right here and on the dashboard. So it's also color coded. So green means low risk, red means high risk, right? So they get instant feedback before they even start their shift. So if they tap on that button, right, they get the full picture, their personal collision risk prediction, something saying like you have a 1.2% chance of being involved in a collision. They can see where they are doing, what they are doing well, and exactly where they need to improve. So no manager needs to have for that conversation. You can just look at it themselves and be proactive with it. So this is a feature that isn't always turned on by default, depending on your settings. So to enable this, you want to go to your database as an admin and go to People. And then you will go to your security clearances. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my Drive app user, which is the standard for the ones that are using the Drive app. And what you want to do is add a sub-clearance. The sub-clearance is a clearance that you will assign to your driver that doesn't give them all of the info in the Drive app. You modify what you want to give them access to. For example, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add one for safety. So I'm going to say Drive app plus safety. And now I'm going to search for view driver safety insight, and you have it right here. Once you turn it on and you save this one, it's pretty simple. You just have to go to your people, users and drivers, and assign it when you create your new driver profile. So when I want to add my user profile, I want to add the username, first name and last name. Make sure that I have at the bottom my security clearance with my new one that I created myself. And then go to my driver tab and make sure that is set to this year's user is a driver. Yes. Once it's done and you save it, your driver will be able to see this in their Drive app once they log in. Awesome. Okay, so let's continue. So far, we've talked about preventing and predicting risk, the proactive side of the safety. Now we are going to move to the third and final piece of the puzzle, right? So we are going to analyze with the collision reconstruction method. Because here's the truth, right? Even with the best prediction models in the world, the accident will still happen sometimes. And when they do, a simple notification is not enough, right? You need answer. So, was your driver at fault? Was the other vehicle speeding? Did your driver brake hard to avoid something, or were they not paying attention? These are the questions that matters, and they often the one that ends up in insurance claim or legal conversation. So your collision reconstruction use your telematic data, essentially your vehicle black box, to answer those questions with physics, not just opinion. So no guessing, no finger pointing, just data. So when a collision happens, a lot of things are going on at once. Okay, so there are usually a witness statement, at least the two drivers that have been involved, their own version. Then you have possibly other witness, hopefully a police report, get filled. And then there's the damage assessment, right? So how much damage to which vehicle and who is responsible. But even with all of that, there's still a piece missing from the puzzle. So subjective account and he says, she said are not really reliable enough on their own, especially when it comes to insurance claim or legal process. This is where the collision reconstruction add-in comes in. It fills the gap with real timestamp physics-based data from the Go device. So you have the speed, the G-force, the GPS location. So you have something objective and concrete to work with. So let's look at exactly what these add-ins give you and how it works. First, if you don't already have it in your platform, you can add it directly from the marketplace. And this is at no cost, so I highly encourage everyone to get it installed. It's available for any devices that collects engine data, so Pro Plus, Go Model, all of that. So here's what it does. It gives you a detailed picture of your Go device recording leading up to, during, and immediately after an accident. It pulls three key pieces of data: vehicle speed, GPS location, and accelerometer data, covering braking, acceleration, and the force involved in the crash. So together, all of these data points let you build a clear timestamp timeline of exactly what happened. So now I want to be upfront about one thing, okay? This is an analysis of raw telematic data. What is not, it's determination of fault or liability. Okay, that's outside of our scope. We provide the data, not the judgment. So if you need a full reconstruction that includes site inspections, witness interviews, or legal conclusion, we recommend working with a certified third-party accident reconstructionist. We use our data to support their investigation, not to replace it. So before we look at the software, let's understand what's happening inside the hardware, okay? So the Go device has 3-axis accelerators that constantly sensing motion, but it's programmed to ignore those vertical movement. So speed bump and pothole don't trigger an alert, okay? It's only looking at horizontal forces, front to back and side to side. When it detects a force exceeding 2.5 G-force, it triggers a collision level event, and it switches into the black box mode. Okay, so it records at 100 times per second. And because the device stores a buffer of data at all time, the recording doesn't just start at the moment of the impact. Okay, it captures the second leading up to it. So you can see things like whether the driver's brake before the crash. All of this is automatically transmitted to MyGeotab, ready for you to use and to analyze after. So what exactly gets when that black box kicks in, right? Let me break it down. First, the device look at the exact latitude and longitude, and it knows precisely where the event happened. So it combines with that, you get the speed at the moment of the impact. Then you get the high frequency accelerometer data, which is the force measuring that we just talked about. That's what tells you how hard the impact was and from which direction. And finally, it's going to pull in the engine data, like the RPM, which tells you what the vehicle was actually doing at that time, at that moment. Okay, was it the engine accelerating, idling? That context matters a lot. So all of these points work together to give you a complex picture, not just something that happened, but how, where, and what the driver was doing when it did. So this is what the official collision reconstruction report looks like. If you're dealing with a major insurance claim or a court case, this is the document you want. Okay, it brings all the raw data together into one single forensic view. So the reports show you the point of impact, right? So you have it right here, including the angle of force, so you can see exactly where the vehicle was hit. You also see the speed profile, and just as importantly, the RPM data. So that tells you whether the driver was accelerating, braking at the moment of impact, which can make a big difference in how you interpret what happened. It also includes a margin of error and a disclaimer, so everything is clear and documented for legal purposes. So now you don't always need the full report, right? Sometimes you just need one specific piece of data, and you can pull that directly in MyGeotab yourself, and we're going to look at that in a moment. So all of these data points are individually accessible in MyGeotab. So you have the exception report, the trip history, the speed data, the collision and log data. You have also the engine measurements. You pick what's relevant to your situation. You can pull just that, or you can also pull the collision reconstruction run. So I want to make this a little bit more concrete. Okay, remember the SUV 954 from earlier that I was talking to you about? So the vehicle that we flagged was at 27% of collision risk back in January. So let's use that example and show you how this actually looks like in practice. Okay, so let me show you something. Before we dive in, I just want to give you a little bit of context because I think that's going to be a little bit more powerful. Okay, so let me just show you right here. So earlier in the session, like I said, we compared the assets page and we saw the SUV 954 sitting at 27% of collision risk. It was way above the fleet average, way above the benchmark, but what it didn't tell you is that the system already flagged it, right? So back in January 2025. So it was telling us something months before anything happened. And SUV 954 belongs to my colleague and friend Lisa, and she gave me permission to share the data with you today, so I really appreciate that, and you can tell her I'm good with that, okay? So on August 28, 2025, a couple of months, 8 months after it was first flagged, right? Lisa was on her lunch break, and she wanted to go pick up her car from the dealership that was just a few blocks away, really close to her house. And she had a 1 p.m. meeting, and she thought that she would have time to go and grab her car and come back home quickly. But something happened, okay? I'm going to show you first the dash cam footage of the incident, and then we'll go look at the collision reconstruction report in MyGeotab. So what happened there is that she was coming back from the dealership with her car, and she wanted to make it home in time for her 1 o'clock appointment. Well, she was at the light, and possibly she was trying to text her meeting to say, I might be maybe 5 minutes late because there was some traffic. Well, what happened is that the light turned green. The first vehicle started to move, the second one too, and then she started moving. But then the first vehicle stopped, the second one did, but she didn't. Well, she stopped just right after bumping into the one before her. So let's look at that. We can see that the traffic light will change. She start moving, and she didn't stop in time, right? So here we can see what happened on the dash cam, but let's go back to my Geotab to see where we can find that. So if I go to my safety, and I'm going to see my collision reconstruction add-in, I'm going to look for her vehicle. And I'm going to select this vehicle type. And I remember when it happened, it was August 28, 2025. And we're going to go back to August 28 and find the latest collision. And we are going to see it right there. So I have all the collision reconstruction info for you. So the name of the vehicle, the driver, she was not assigned to it, but that's her car. We have the VIN, the vehicle type, the time of the collision, right? We have the point of impact. We also have the trip history, where it was at. And just for a point of reference, she was so close to her house. And then you have the speed data, the speed profile, the RPM data, and also the accelerometer data. And obviously, like I said, you have the margin of error and the disclaimer, so everything is clear and concise. So this is where you can export the PDF file, have it there, share it with the appropriate people to look into it. And you can also go in your own exceptions if you don't want to see, just look at the whole full report and then go by the rules like I showed you earlier. So collision, minor and major. And I'm going to go back to that specific day. And we can see that the major collision that happened was Lisa's, right? So SUV 954. And we can see when it happened on August 28, 2025. And I got this right here where it happened. And so this really concludes our session today. I hope it was helpful for you. So we have covered a lot of ground today. I want you to walk away with one thing in this session. 3 things, actually, 3 layers, right? So first, monitoring, the foundation. We move away from the legacy rules and their false positive towards smarter, auto-calibrated rules that your driver can trust. The minor and major collision detection rules now flag real incident automatically. The prediction, the windshield, the collision risk model shift you from reactive to proactive instead of reviewing what happened last month, right? You know today which assets and driver have the highest probability of being a collision before it happened. Then we analyze the evidence locker, right? When a collision does happen, the collision reconstruction add-ins give you the data to understand exactly what occurs, the speed, the force, and intent, so you can respond with facts, right? Not guesses. And then together, these tools helps you build a real safety culture, one that prevents incident, protects your drivers, and protects your business. So thank you so much for joining today's webinar. I was really happy to be with you guys.
Well, thank you for giving us that presentation. Thanks for all the information you shared. I know there's a lot of questions on this topic. People wondering, how does this work? You know, trying to get a little into the weeds. Okay, how is this going to help me be safer as a fleet? And I think that's, on the top of mind for all of us who, work in fleets is like safety. I mean, that's the most important thing is that, one thing is, saving money and getting in place on time, but staying safe is something that is so important to all of us. So thanks for all this information. Now, I did try to answer most all the questions as we went throughout the presentation. I know there was still some confusion about different clearances. Maybe you weren't seeing the same things. I tried to share a couple documents out there, but I think what I'm going to do is try to get the questions together since there were a lot of similar themes and put together a couple different resources that will help you really understand, what security clearance you need, for your drivers to be able to see in the Drive app and for you to be able to access the rules and things like that. I know a lot of you had issues with being able to actually do the things in your database, so it may just need updates to your clearances. So I will send out a couple of resources. We will make a document with all of this in here, send it to everybody along with the recording, along with Thanicha's presentation. It was a great presentation. That's definitely one to bookmark and keep handy. Lots of good information there. So thank you, Thanicha. Thank you for your presentation. Thanks everybody who stayed all the way to the very end. You guys are awesome. You always stay to the very end. And we'll see you next week. Don't worry, the learning continues. Next week, we will be back here, same time, same place. Tell your coworkers. Feel free. If you're busy, you know it's going to be recorded. So register for it so you get that email with the recording in it. Make sure that you do that. But you can always find it online and things like our YouTube channel. You can go check that out and stuff. So thank you for your time. Thanks for all the questions that were asked. And we'll see you next week, our next Learning Live. Have a good one, everybody.